Begin transmission. This is Admiral Kozar of the Churax Dominion, acting commander of the subjugation force and representative to the Galactic Council. If you're hearing this, I am either dead or no longer in command. Either way, you need to know the truth before it's sanitized, buried, or rewritten into the Council's propaganda archives. You need to know why we lost, why they won. It started with a vote. The session hall was packed, as usual. The 8-seated species of the Council looked down upon the holoscreen projections of Sector 92X, a world labeled Terra, designated a Category 5 primal, rich in resources, atmospherically compatible, and supposedly harmless. Their transmissions were erratic, their technology visibly primitive, and their diplomacy non-existent. They'd been broadcasting open-band signals for less than a millennium, blaring noise across the stars, inviting attention. They got it. The motion passed with near unanimity. Some wanted the planet stripped for minerals. Others saw a long-term slave labor population. A few even suggested uplifting them into compliance. But none feared them. Not truly. A minor footnote entered into the record warned of something called nuclear armaments, but the analyst's summary read, unrefined, localized, non-relativistic. Dismissed. We sent the first wave within 30 solar cycles. The subjugation fleet comprised 32 vessels from the Dominion and 11 from auxiliary member races, recon-class destroyers, atmospheric stabilizers, control ships with population suppression tech. The orders were simple. Force compliance. Earth was not to be destroyed. Its labor value was deemed significant. They didn't even let us fire first. Not openly. When we entered orbit, we received no greeting, no surrender, no panic. Instead, we observed mass data surges. Civilian networks went dark within hours. We assumed it was internal failure. It wasn't. The humans had voluntarily disconnected themselves from their own infrastructure. By the third rotation, our entire linguistic AI suite was flooded with false information, recursive loops, and taunts written in a dead Earth language no one could translate. One message translated simply to, "We see you." We landed in Australia first. Wide open terrain, low population density, minimal resistance expected. The drop ships touched ground unopposed. Within 10 minutes, 3 were down, not shot from the sky, exploded from below. Improvised devices, crude but devastating. One survivor's feed showed a human hiding under a tarp, igniting a device with a handheld trigger while laughing. Our atmospheric suppressors activated across the American continents next. The humans jammed them. Somehow, not with energy weapons, but microwave pulses from weather satellites reconfigured mid-orbit. How? We didn't know. They turned their civilian infrastructure into weapons in under 72 hours. Highways detonated in sequence as troop transports moved across them. Urban zones became black zones. No drone surveillance survived past the 5th hour. Something about their buildings reflected materials, confusing EM fields. Our AI targeting systems collapsed, misidentified friend and foe, even self-terminated. We adapted. We deployed ground troops, Caraxian elite, the most decorated occupation specialists in the Council. Their first encounter was in an area called Detroit. We expected resistance. What we got was slaughter, not of the humans, of our troops. Urban ambushes using mirror tricks, false heat signatures, and explosive traps using nothing but chemical accelerants and scrap metal. Their weapons weren't clean. They weren't elegant. They simply worked. We captured 2 humans alive. One was a child. The other was a technician, female, mid-30s in their years. She refused to speak. Our neural prongs induced full synaptic pain cycles. She smiled. When we showed her the invasion footage, she spat blood at the lens and muttered one sentence. "You picked the wrong planet." Our command structure fractured within a week. Half the auxiliary members requested retreat. 2 destroyers went missing. No debris, no signal. Gone. We recovered one of their black boxes, heavily damaged but decipherable. The last image recorded was a civilian Earth shuttle, supposedly unarmed, detonating at point-blank range inside the docking bay of the Varn ship. They called it a suicide tactic. Our records had no protocol for this behavior. They had no fear of death. They used death. We initiated orbital bombardment over the area designated Eastern Europe. The aim was to demonstrate overwhelming power. The bombs never hit. They were intercepted by atmospheric weather balloons carrying metallic nets laced with magnetic charges. They sabotaged our munitions with weather toys. The detonation occurred in midair, and the resulting electromagnetic pulse fried half our satellite network. Their casualties? Unknown. Ours? Catastrophic. We escalated. The Council authorized kinetic strikes. No energy signatures. No warnings. Metal rods accelerated to orbital velocity. They landed with terrifying precision. But not where we aimed. Guidance systems have been hijacked, manually. Human hackers, operating with equipment centuries behind ours, rerouted our payloads to strike empty zones or even our own ground units. They didn't just fight. They studied. They adapted. Every day we remained, they became more efficient. Human soldiers began wearing our armor, refitted. They built exosuits from scavenged chassis. Their weapons grew less crude. Railguns appeared. Pulse mimics. One unit reportedly deployed a gravity disruptor of unknown origin. Reports surfaced from the southern hemisphere of bioengineered wildlife being used in combat. They had weaponized their planet, flora capable of generating toxins that bypassed our filtration systems. Feral canines coordinated to track supply units. Fungal spores released in urban centers that deactivated breathing apparatuses. Their AI was rudimentary, yet terrifying. They didn't replicate ours. They made something else, limited, chaotic, unpredictable. Swarm drones that responded to audio cues. Battle bots powered by converted internal combustion engines. Loud, crude, hot, but they didn't stop moving. They didn't need remote support. We lost half a battalion to one modified garbage disposal unit that had been rigged with sharpened blades and mounted explosives. Our troops developed what they called Earth Terror Syndrome. Sleep disruption, paranoia, auditory hallucinations. Some refused to leave the ships. Others jettisoned themselves to avoid being deployed. One entire crew barricaded themselves in a maintenance shaft and detonated their own fusion core. We demanded backup. The Council refused. They insisted we weren't trying hard enough. Earth's resource value, they said, outweighed the cost of continued occupation. We executed contingency plan Omega, planetary sterilization protocol. But before we could activate the payload, our flagship was overridden. The console interface flooded with ancient Earth music, a composition labeled Ride of the Valkyries. The ship's engines detonated. This is not a plea. It is not an apology. It is a record, one I doubt you will acknowledge, but it will remain buried under your denials until it erupts again, because it will. You still do not understand what we uncovered. You still cling to numbers, projections, metrics. You think Earth was a miscalculation. It wasn't. It was a revelation. And we ignored it until it consumed us. After first defeat, the Council didn't send reinforcements. They sent auditors, bureaucrats in armored shuttles. They demanded explanations, logs, reports, cost-benefit analyses. We gave them everything. What we had left. It wasn't enough. They accused us of corruption, fabrication, cowardice. They had to see for themselves. So we brought them to Earth. 47 officials from 12 species. High-ranking, shielded, escorted, We landed them near the ruins of what used to be Chicago. Our scans showed nothing. No heat signatures. No movement. The area was abandoned. Until it wasn't. 6 minutes after landing, their transport exploded. Not from an external device. From inside. One of the sanitation drones they brought with them had been tampered with. Their own equipment, rerouted by code buried in their own system updates. The explosion didn't kill all of them. The survivors fled. We tried to extract them. They vanished. When we finally found their remains 2 days later, their bodies were untouched. But each of them had identical messages carved into their uniforms. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just the words, "We told you not to come." At this point, the Council elevated Earth status. They did not declare war. They declared classification. Information blackout. All further transmissions regarding Terra were restricted. All known data archived under sovereign-level encryption. They wanted to pretend Earth never existed. We knew that wouldn't work. The next incident confirmed it. In Sector 88T, a Charnian mining crew intercepted a civilian freighter of unknown origin. The registry matched no known civilization. The vessel bore no weapons, no shields, and ran on combustion-based drives. The crew approached casually. They never came back. A recovery drone found their ship drifting. Systems functional, crew missing. Inside the freighter were Earth artifacts, books, flags, tools, personal logs. The log entry repeated one sentence. "We're everywhere now." This wasn't expansion. It was infiltration. Quiet, focused, intentional. Earth had not just survived our invasion. They had repurposed it, studied our weaknesses, captured our technology, and then they vanished. Entire continents went dark on our planetary scans. Not destroyed, cloaked. We attempted remote reconnaissance. Each probe sent and either failed to report or return gibberish. Streams of Earth poetry, nonsense data, cryptic threats, or corrupted files containing human laughter. And then came the reversals. Planets far from Earth began to fail. Quietly at first. Minor malfunctions. Infrastructure failures. AI command inconsistencies. Then uprisings. Unexplained rebellions on compliant worlds. When we investigated, the signs were unmistakable. Human weapons, human tactics, human symbols, crudely etched into walls and banners. They weren't conquering. They were liberating. But no humans were found. Just ideas, methods, influence. A single phrase began to spread among outer colonies. "We are Terra now." Even species with no known contact with Earth began to chant it. They weren't united by race or species or language. They were united by defiance. They fought as if infected by something more than ideology, as if human resistance had become a virus, and it was spreading. We attempted to contain it. Executions, suppression squads, orbital fire. It didn't matter. The more we tried to crush it, the more it flourished. It wasn't about Earth anymore. Earth had become a symbol, and symbols cannot be bombed. The Varn sent a new infiltration fleet, the best they had. 42 vessels cloaked quiet undetected. 3 weeks into orbit, they disappeared. Not destroyed, taken. When the Council demanded an explanation, a single transmission arrived. No source, no origin, just a simple statement. "They're helping us now." The VAR never sent another fleet. Council panic began. Meetings were held in silence. Accusations traded behind closed doors. Blame passed between departments. Earth's name was no longer spoken aloud. They called it the silence. Entire committees formed around reclassifying the event. Some called it a collapse. Others, a psychological contagion. But no one sent another invasion. Instead, we began to receive packages. Not bombs, not weapons, returns. Human prisoners we once captured, sent back in pristine condition, well-fed, well-armed, and changed. They no longer spoke of escape. They spoke of messages, of instructions, of warnings. One man, dropped at the gates of the Dominion's High Archive, walked silently into custody and uttered only 3 words before self-terminating. "We're just beginning. We analyze the remains. Implants, ours modified. Neural architecture, enhanced." He had learned techniques we had classified above black level clearance. He had rewritten parts of his own DNA to accept data input as protein strings. Earth was no longer just fighting back. They were evolving faster than we could catalog. We tried silence. We tried forgetting. Neither worked. 3 months later, Trade Route 17A vanished. Not disrupted, erased. Navigation logs corrupted. Way stations missing. Entire asteroid fields repositioned. The sector was later found to house a structure we had never seen, human-made, but beyond any engineering standard known. A ring of satellites, carved from our own salvage, broadcasting a single repeating signal. "Come find us." A retrieval fleet was dispatched. Of the 20 ships sent, 6 returned. Each had suffered full AI core shutdown. The captains were in stasis. The logs showed no combat, no resistance, just a point where their systems failed. When the AI cores were reviewed, one line of code had overwritten all others. // function override, human pattern _ ghosts. It made no sense. It bypassed every firewall. Our best engineers couldn't decipher it. We tried to replicate the code. It erased itself and left only a laughing face drawn in ASCII format. That was the last time anyone tried to breach the human quarantine. The next phase was worse. They began speaking to us. Openly, calmly, with the confidence of a predator surrounded by prey that still thinks it's in control. They hijacked council broadcasts, intercepted official communiques. They didn't threaten. They observed. You measure species by age, by size, by peace. We are the exception. We are not old. We are not large. We are not peaceful. We are human, and we learn fast. Council AI systems began showing instability afterward. Not destruction, reprogramming. Voice assistants began speaking in human dialects. Personal devices reclassified owners as subject. One central archive burst into flames after translating an Earth file called Guerrilla Warfare 101. That file was never recovered. We sent emissaries, carefully selected, humble, offering peace. They returned with a list, not demands, not requests, a list of everything we had done wrong for 1,000 years, planet by planet, species by species. It was accurate, disturbingly so. Classified operations, covert slaughters, political manipulations, all documented. Some of it we had even tried to erase. And yet they knew, at the bottom, a final sentence. The moment the humans' laughter echoed through the breach, a ripple of silence spread across the alien bridge. The Virexi commander felt his third heart flutter, a sign of instinctive terror his species hadn't evolved past, despite their dominance of 14 star systems. The signal from the boarding party was cut off not with static, but with the unmistakable sound of rending metal, followed by something no translation software could properly process, mocking defiance. The human hadn't just repelled the elite strike team. He had taken their weapons, reversed their entry path, and hurled the remains of their war drones into the Virexi airlock, reprogrammed to serve as explosive decoys. The tactic didn't exist in any Virexi doctrine. It shouldn't have worked. It did. Captain Rollin initiated a full ship-wide lockdown. Doors sealed. Defense turrets activated. Internal gravity recalibrated. None of it mattered. Human physics didn't obey standard principles. The gravity reversal only made him faster. The turrets shot themselves after he redirected their targeting arrays by smacking the control panel with a wrench made from the boarding pod's fuselage. In 38 seconds, engineering fell. 56 more, and weapons control followed. The bridge was next. Rollin ordered every crew member to their last resort positions and prepared the final protocol. Ship self-destruct. It was humiliating, but the alternative, captured by a being who broke rules not out of necessity, but because it was fun, was worse. But the human didn't breach the bridge. He hacked the internal comms and broadcast one sentence, slow and clear. You demanded surrender. I'm here to accept yours. They tried jamming. He reactivated their own comms against them using a backup maintenance frequency designed for damage control teams. He reprogrammed their HUDs to show nothing but a single image, the Earth's moon with the phrase, "Try me." Surrender became the only option that didn't involve mass panic. And still, it wasn't over, because when they jettisoned their weapons cache, hoping to appease a human, he pulled it back using a gravitational tow line that he hadn't built with technology, but by literally welding a repulsor coil to their drop tractor beam unit and programming it manually while dodging automated lasers. The human didn't take their surrender. He left them floating, powerless, weaponless, and humiliated, broadcasting a loop of their defeat to the nearest neutral relay station. He didn't want their ship. He didn't want their tech. He wanted the message to spread. And it did. 6 hours later, 17 factions called emergency councils. Half of them had once war game scenarios involving humans. Not one of those simulations had predicted this outcome. None of them had accounted for a single human breaking protocol, physics, and morale across an entire battleship by himself. But Earth didn't celebrate. The man was debriefed by a committee of scientists, soldiers, and diplomats. They asked the only question that mattered. How? He answered simply, I got tired of waiting for them to break the rules first. The diplomats didn't understand. The scientists did. The soldiers nodded. Because humans don't escalate by design. They escalate because the moment they realize someone's trying to corner them with rules, they reinvent the game. If the enemy builds an unbreakable defense, they'll dig under it. If a blockade is absolute, they'll teleport fruit flies infected with logic bombs past it. If a galaxy tries to impose limits on them, they'll redefine what limit means. The Virexi incident wasn't a victory. It was a signal flare. The human didn't act alone. Earth had others like him. Thousands trained not in obedience, but in improvisation. Not in perfection, but in adaptation. They weren't the best because of their weapons. They were the best because they didn't need them. And then the other species started testing that claim. Quietly at first. Assassins disguised as traitors. Bioengineered plagues slipped into cargo routes. EMP mines hidden in asteroid fields. Every time, humans responded not with mirrored force, but with completely unpredictable, absurd solutions. The plague? Cured using yogurt bacteria modified in a garage lab. The EMP mines? Converted into space farming tech. The assassins? Recruited by the humans before their first strike, offered triple the pay and a pension. Alien military doctrines crumbled. Alliances began fracturing. Fear wasn't the driving factor, it was uncertainty. You could predict anger. You could prepare for logic. But you couldn't stop someone who thought every problem was a puzzle to be solved with duct tape, caffeine, and stubbornness. Soon, fleets stopped patrolling near human systems. Not because they feared destruction, but because no one wanted to explain to a superior officer how a single human engineer had turned an entire dreadnought into a makeshift amusement park for children from a neutral planet. Humans didn't just win wars. They made them look absurd. The Virexi Empire collapsed from within in less than a standard year. Not from war, from ridicule. Their enemies didn't invade. They pointed and laughed, showing memes of their flagship's defeat projected on interstellar forums. Recruitment plummeted. Officers resigned. The leadership once feared was remembered only as a cautionary tale. Never pick a fight with someone who thinks physics is optional. Humanity didn't expand like an empire. It didn't need to. Every defeat they handed out became a seed. Worlds that had once been neutral began adopting human tactics. Not weapons, ideas, fluid thinking, adaptive tech, nonlinear strategy. Chaos is a feature, not a flaw. And then came the true test. A coalition of 6 hyperspecies, calling themselves the Axis of Order, decided humanity had destabilized the galaxy. They issued a demand: submit to collective regulation or face total sanction. No trade, no technology, no transit. Earth's reply came not from governments or military command. It came from a university. They sent a student project, a series of unmanned drones programmed with a recursive learning AI. Each drone could observe, mimic, and outperform any single task it witnessed. Within days, they infiltrated Axis systems, not to sabotage, but to outperform. Farming bots harvested 600% more yield. Repair drones optimized reactor output. Logistics were transformed. Economies boomed. And then the drones politely requested transit back to Earth. The Axis panicked. They tried to block the drones. The drones rerouted themselves using the same quantum slipstreams the Axis had declared inaccessible. The blockade turned into an import line. Sanctions collapsed in less than a week. At every step, humans didn't destroy. They evolved. They didn't conquer. They disproved. And the galaxy learned that the true weapon wasn't power. It was creativity unchained. Then came the Black Event. A signal from a collapsed binary system indicated a new form of quantum communication, faster than anything theorized, dangerous, powerful. The Axis, the remnants of the Virexi, and 5 other major powers all scrambled to study it. Earth sent 2 humans, not ships, not fleets. 2 people, 1 linguist, 1 mathematician. They arrived late. Everyone else had already failed to decipher the signal. The humans translated it in 3 hours. It